date today? Today is February 9th or 10th, 2015. February 11th, 2015. I think it's the Kaf Vav or Kaf Zayin Shabbat. So I wanted to discuss with you some observations about Iyov from the Moreh Nebuchim. And I've been reading a C.G. Young, and what I understand from C.G. Young, and had I not studied Chazal, I would not have understood it the way I'm going to articulate it. So I'm not sure that if C.G. Young was here, he would have said it like I'm saying it. He probably would have used the word subconscious or psyche. But I'm going to use different words because I studied Chazal. And one thing that always confused me is this concept of the Satan. The Satan in Iyov. What is the Satan in Iyov? Now, if you look at the way Harambam describes it, and the way the book of Iyov describes it, the Satan seems to be a living creature.
A person, yes.
Right? And Harambam, in the chapter on Iyov, which I read so many times, and now for some reason here it is, okay. On the chapter on Iyov, he says, this chapter on Iyov, which is Pelek Gimel, Perek Kaf Bet, and then the next chapter after that, he says some incredible things. For example, he says that Iyov, what I'm about to say now, he's going to quote the Hachamim now. Asher zecharuhu hachachamim, asher be'er kol mesupak. This ma'amar of Chazal that we're about to read, it reveals or it explains almost all of the sefekot. Ve'gila kol mechuseh, anything that's hidden is revealed. Of course, ve'her'arov sitra Torah. That's an incredible statement. And what is the ma'amar? Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. This is from the Gemara Masechet Baba Batra Tet Zayin, where they discuss Iyov.
First chapter.
Right. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Who? Satan. Who? Yetzer Hara. Who? Malach HaMa'aved. So we know this Satan is an individual. It's by individual I mean a living, thinking.
A person.
A person. I like the word person. It's a person. And this Satan, which is the person that comes before Hashem and speaks to Hashem, is also the Malach HaMavet. And the same person is interestingly Yetzer Hara, meaning the Yetzer Hara, again, who Satan, who Yetzer Hara, who Malach HaMavet. And then he brings another, later on in the same sugya, it says, Tana, Yored, Umat'eh. That's the Yetzer Hara. I interpret, what is Yored Umat'eh? The Yetzer Hara is Yored Umat'eh. Ole umasti. That's a Satan.
Yes.
Now the Satan goes up.
And mastin.
And mastin al Iyov. Notel reshut and notel neshama.
Malach HaMavet.
Right. Now here we see again notel reshut, meaning he's a persona. He's a person. So C.G. Young speaks about this person, but he refers to the person. Ultimately, C.G. Young's conclusion is that this person is what ultimately he calls unconscious, right? The unconscious mind. But he considers, in the book Psychology and Religion, he considers the unconscious mind to be a sort of persona. And here he says, for example, he's talking about certain thoughts that come up, certain ideas that come up spontaneously. And he says as follows: they are not made by the individual, but they rather happen, and here's interesting, they even force themselves upon the individual's consciousness, right? And then again, speaking on that, later on this is page 4 of the book, he says, it is a dynamic it seizes and controls the human subject. I can't think of a better description of the Yetzer Hara. It seizes and controls the human subject, which is always rather its victim than its creator. Right, so if you...
The human subject is the victim of the Yetzer Hara.
Right. It's not that the person was, thinking, I want to be neurotic today and, have an unusual fare of birds. And then he, in fact, there is a Yetzer Hara or Satan that imposes certain fears upon the person. It's almost so. This Yetzer Hara, if you read the language of C.G. Young, it's itself. It's alive. It's alive. It's a thing. So we have this Yetzer Hara, and ultimately, as I said, he calls it subconscious. I don't care what you call it. I'm not interested in nomenclature. I'm more interested in the concept that there is this living creature that sees as an individual, and that's later on. Rambam brings a pasuk, lapetach hatat roves. There is this thing that we call hatat, and the minute the person is born, the hatat is there, and he takes over the person. Lapetach hatat roves. So it conforms with C.G. Young. So I want to explain the structure of what happened to Eov. Not so much the substance, but more the structure. So we know there's this Yetzer Hara, or the Satan, same thing. And we know that it's an independent living creature that, so to speak, takes over the individual, unless the individual pushes him away, as the Torah says, on the one hand, but it says, ve'elecha teshukato ve'ata timshol bo. So you're obligated to control it. You're not allowed to allow it to control you. Okay. What happened to Eov? This is what happened to Eov. There's a castle that Rambam discusses at the end of Mulay.
Yeah. By the way, no question in my mind that the castle is taken from Kafka, is Jewish.
Yes.
Was taken from Rambam.
Yes. That's interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I mentioned in one of my books. I mentioned.
Right. So there's a castle. Right. This castle, there's people at different levels and different closeness. Not everybody enters the castle, but some people do enter the castle. And even in the castle, there's different chambers and there's different rooms. Not everybody gets to be in the presence of the king.
Or to see, yeah.
Or to see it. But some people do. Mm-hmm. They get to the king. Okay. Now, if you're outside the castle, it's not so offensive how you are dressed or how you behave. I mean, when I say not so offensive, I was very careful. I didn't say it's good to dress poorly and it's good to be unshowered and unkept and improper. But it's not so offensive because you're outside the castle. But the minute you enter the castle, now you're coming closer to the presence of the Creator. Now, Hanabah makes a big deal about the Satan. And he says that the first time the Satan comes up in the presence of Hashem, which is the castle, he says the Satan wasn't supposed to be there. It says, V'yabo gam has-Satan betocham. And Rambam says, he's not supposed to be in the castle. The Satan is not supposed to be there. The Satan is there. Then later on, the next time he comes, it doesn't say V'yabo gam has-Satan betocham. It says, later on it says that the Satan comes lehityaseb al Adonai. I'm sorry, no. It says V'yavo b'nei Elohim v'Satan. No, ki lo amar V'yavo b'nei Elohim v'Satan lityaseb al Adonai. Right? It says V'yavo b'nei Elohim lityaseb al Adonai V'yavo gam hasatan betocham. That's the first time.
Like he hitchhiked. So
Exactly.
Yes.
And Rambam says En beno ben Elohim yachaskelal ve'en lo sham mahalchim. He's not supposed to be there. Mahalichim. Mahalachim. Right. So the question is, so my question to Rambam is, if En lo sham mahalachim,
What is he doing?
what is he doing there? Okay. But the second time around, when the Satan comes, it says... Yes, exactly. Lityaseb. Exactly. All right. That's Rambam's point, not my point. Okay? בפעם הראשונה ובשנייה לא אמר בראשונה להתייסב, ובשנייה אמר ויבוא גם השטן בתוכם להתייסב על אדוני. And he says, והבן זה העניין, להסתכל מה מאוד נפלא. וראה איך עלו בידי אל אלו העניינים כדמות נבואה. So this is the secret, and I would like now to explain this secret. How does the Satan get there? The Satan gets there because on the one hand you have this person who's sechel, is nivra b'selem Elohim, and the mind of the person is a very special thing. And I want to stop here for a moment to discuss the mind, the sechel of the person. And again, this I learned from C.G. Jung. Is the sechel real? I mean, I can't touch it.
Can you explain me what's your question?
Right. We have thought. We think. We have sechel. We have intellect. Is the intellect real? For example, this I can touch. I can touch the sofa, right? Or the air. I feel it. I can feel the air, right? Or I see the colors. So those are real, right? But the intellect, what happens in the human mind, is that real? So the answer always is this prejudice, universal prejudice. Of course, what happens in the human mind is not real. What's real is what I can see under the microscope. That's real, right? So the thoughts, the sechel, is not real. But in order to understand this, you have to overcome that prejudice, and I overcame the prejudice from the following sentence in C.G. Jung, where he discusses that very point about what is and what is not real. And he says as follows: it is an almost ridiculous prejudice to assume that existence can only be physical. Meaning, many people attack this whole notion of psychology and psychoanalysis and say, well, the mind is not real, so how can you say it's scientific to examine the mind? You can't put the mind under a microscope. So he says that's a ridiculous prejudice. And by the way, you once said that somebody once told you, God, show me in the microscope, God. I mean, that's only for an intellectual to say that, he has to be a lunatic. Only a lunatic would ask to see God under a microscope, because of course God doesn't have a physical existence, because he's the creator of the physical. So, but here we see what C.G. Jung says. That's just a prejudice. But this is what I love, and this sentence to me is one of the most brilliant sentences I've read among the Ummat HaOlam. As a matter of fact, the only form of existence we know of immediately is psychic, the mind. Why? We might well say, on the contrary, that physical existence is merely an inference, since we know of matter only insofar as we perceive psychic images transmitted by the senses. How do I know that this is? Oh, I can see it, but seeing is something that your mind perceives, the seeing. If you didn't have a brain, if somebody took that brain out of the head, there will be nobody experiencing that seeing, correct? Well, let's say I say, I can touch this, I can touch, so it's real. Oh, but when you say you touch it, what you really mean is that the nerves on your finger are experiencing a particular sensation, and that sensation is being processed by the mind. So, I would say not only that I'm against the prejudice that says that which is not physical is real, but I would say I actually have a prejudice on the other way. And I think anytime any Chacham who wants to reach Nevuah has to have the prejudice the other way. And that prejudice is, no, the physical is not real because it is only a function of the mind. And ultimately the mind is the true reality. So now let's get back to Iyov. How does the Satan get in the presence of Hashem? And it is exactly this connection between the mind and that lower level of reality that we call physical, that you can see under the microscope. It is that connection that enables Satan to go up there. Because normally what you have in the presence of Hashem are the malachim. The malachim are the sechalim anifradim. There is no place there for the Satan. So how does the Satan get there?
Through the mind.
Because there is a person who on the one hand has sechel, and on the other hand, he is seized and controlled by that person called the Satan. And when that person, a person like, not every person, only he who enters the palace, he brings the Satan with him. Now, as long as the person is outside, the 99.9999% of humanity, they're way far away from the castle. So they never bring the Satan with them into the castle, because they never enter the castle. But somebody like Iyov, who's Tam, Veyashar, Yireh Elohim, B'dot Tovot, Sadiq, Osei Sedek, teaches the people beautiful derech eretz, he enters the castle. Now when he enters the castle, he brings the Satan with him. Because there's one thing that Harambam says that Iyov wasn't. it never says Eov was a Hacham. So he enters the castle by virtue of his incredible, exceptional midot, beautiful behavior, dignity, and grace, and yet not a Chacham. So therefore the Satan seizes him and controls him. So he's in the castle and he's there with the Satan. The first time it happens, excused. But then the second time it happens, now the Satan is becoming a resident in the castle. The Satan is Nisav, and at this point, the Satan is given the instructions to take control of Yom and make his life miserable. So what happened to Eov can only happen to the person who can read the Moneh Nebuchim. Why am I saying that? Because the Rambam says the Moneh Nebuchim is for the person who is Navoch, who has good midot, who is intelligent, who is studied, well versed in the sciences and so on, but he has certain things that he's never resolved. That person who's Navoch, who wants to, so to speak, enter the castle, but he never overcame certain issues.
What are the issues that this person did not resolve?
He can't explain, for example, why it says Yad Hashem. Yad Hashem means Hashem has a hand. So what does Yad Hashem mean? Now if you're going to tell me that Yad Hashem doesn't mean physical, then why does it say Yad Hashem? So you're going to say it's a mashal. So what does that mashal mean? Or Einei Hashem mishotetot b'chol haaretz. He hasn't. What you say in your own mysticus is a person who needs to pave a new road for himself. He still hasn't done it, right? Navoch, Hayran. So there's certain issues that he hasn't resolved. How do you relate Chokhmah of the, let's say, Aristotle, or today we have other Chokhmah, with the Torah, which is first, anthropological. So you answer that Aristotle was the foundation, and then we have Chokhmah, and then you go up to Nevuah. So these are the things, these are the types of issues that Yov never resolved. He never had the Ruach HaKodesh. He never had Nevuah. Now I think there's a beautiful pasuk in Yov that shows who Yov was before he resolved this issue. It says he was looking at the moon once. He was looking at the moon, and apparently he was touched, and then he immediately puts his hand on his mouth.
Like we said, Torah. Like this.
Right. That shows he's sort of Navoch. He's overwhelmed by the moon, right? Now, the moon has a certain beauty. Aga al-pi, I think also Aga al-pi means he was about to say something and he stopped himself.
I understood it, but I don't know, but in no way doesn't mean anything. Because I don't know if you remember in the Sephardic, the text of
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course.
So that's what I thought it meant, but that doesn't necessarily.
I actually think it means he was about to say something, and he stopped himself. Whereas
what was he about to say?
Almost the Shevach of the moon, which he stopped himself. He was good. He was good. But that shows the inner.
The mechanic.
He hasn't resolved those. The Moneh Nebuchim was written for a very specific person, not for a div, not for a person who's unstudied, not for a person who doesn't have good midot. It's written for the person who has good midot, who's studied, who's educated, but he hasn't reached the next level, the level of a Hacham. A Hacham is a person who understands the Sodot of the Torah, understands what Yad Hashem means, what does it say Yad Hashem if it's not a hand, and the Ahdut of Hashem. So Yov didn't reach that level. And that's why he's mitnahem al afar va'efer. I think, I know one, the Pashat of mitnahem al afar va'efer means that he's mitnahem, he feels consoled, not with saying that he's in afar va'efer, he's consoled. But also, mitnahem al afar va'efer, he realizes that his view of what the ultimate reward in the world is, and what is it that makes a person happy, and what is it that I should ultimately strive for, the ultimate goals, is not going to be found in the afar va'efer, which is a physical, because...
Could it mean the following? Mitnahem al afar va'efer, I'm not going to further this. I'm not going to be a perfect person.
Right.
I'm afar va'efer, I'm not going to attain this high madriga, and so be it.
Maybe.
In a sense that he's almost ready to to give up the fight.
Right. Let me say one more thing, and then we can. If you have something you want to add, of course. I don't want to take up all the time. But there's one more thing.
No,
The
please.
famous story in the Masechet Yevamot about Nehemiah Hofer Sihin,
Yes.
that he used to dig the.
Yeah, for the.
Right.
Yeah.
So once his one of his children got lost in one of the underground Sichin, and then everybody was concerned that he was going to die because he was stuck somewhere in some subterranean tunnel. And the Chachamim said, "Can it be that this person with the that his child will die in it?" And they said, "No, it can't be." And of course, a miracle happens, and the Ro'eh comes to the child in the cave.
Yeah, I remember the story.
And the Ro'eh is Avraham Avinu, and he ends up saving the child. Well, that's very nice. So we understand, right? So we understand the ways of Hashem. That's it. No, that's the point of the Chayran. The Naboch thinks he understands because not too long after, another child fell in a well, and this child did die. So you think you understand. You think everything can be understood by man. The Darkei Hashem, and that's the mistake that Eov made. And before you're a Chacham, you make that mistake. The Chacham sees things a little differently. The Chacham understands that Kantechum Shabbat. No, I can't understand everything about Darkei Hashem. And yeah, maybe Nehemiah Chofer Sihin, maybe one of his children, Dafka, and that thing that he has all the Zechuyot, and then the other child dies, just when you think you understood everything. The point is, there's certain issues that Eov had. He entered the castle by virtue of his midot, not being a Chacham and not having overcome those issues. The Satan was still controlling his mind. He brought the Satan into the castle. And the answer was, the only answer is, he has to reach a level of Ruach HaKodesh, which he reaches at the end of the book.
What gives this person the right to bring the Satan into the palace?
He has no right to bring the Satan into the palace.
So how come he's not stopped by somebody?
Hopshit. Man is free. Man is free.
And his freedom means or entitles him to bring the Satan into the palace?
Because it says Mishut Ba'ares U'Mitalech Ba. Mishut Ba'ares is actually the mind of Eov. It's a Dimayon of Eov, where he's trying to reach a level of Nevuah. And he has certain, and you have, for example, in one of the Talmidim of CGN, Robert Johnson, what's called active imagination.
Yeah, I think I have the book.
Right.
Either you gave it to me or I gave it to you.
You gave it to me. No, not only, not active imagination is not Nevuah. And yet the person who knows how to do active imagination, he has fantastic visions. I actually did it once, several times when I was younger and I had more time. So you can have fantastic, and just make you a Navi. That's just the imagination. So Mishut Ba'ares U'Mehitalech Ba. So what happens now? You're Eov, and you're Sholeach, your Dimayon. Where are you Sholeach the Dimayon? Towards Hashem. And what does the Torah say? Lech, Hashem tells to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, Lech red, v'gbalta et ha'ar tzavim lemor. What? V'nihersu al Adonai lir'ot, v'nafal mimenu rab. That's a mashal for the person who's not ready to enter the castle. Who enters, what happens when you enter when you're not ready? You die. So Eov, he entered with his Dimayon, but he wasn't intellectually ready.
So how do you know that he enters? He entered?
Because the pasuk says, Mishut ba'aris u'mitalech ba, and then where does the Satan end up? He ends up with the Malach Elohim. ויבואו בני אלוהים לסבל אדוני, ויבוא גם השטן בתוכם. So בני אלוהים, I know what the בני אלוהים are. What's the Satan doing there? Eov brought them there. He was thinking, and he wanted to reach Nebuah, and he wanted to think about Hashem, and he started thinking about these things. Who is the Creator? What is the Creator? What is He for real? Quote unquote, the word real, What is His reality, so to speak? Now, a person who's not ready and uses his Dimayon to enter, is going to make mistakes. The beginning, the first several chapters of the Moreh, not the first several, but from chapter 4 or 5 or 6 onwards, one of those chapters, he discusses people who enter when they're not ready. That's what happened to Eov. And that's why he was punished. For that. That was his sin, and that's the Satan. And ultimately, he resolves. He ends up at the end of the book, he has the Ruach HaKodesh, he has the Nevuah, and Hashem speaks to him directly, and then he understands.
I don't know if you read my book, my article on Job. I said, I don't know, that at the end Job says, I don't want it. And just to give me long life, let me enjoy life, I want to have pizza, and I want to have Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
and God gives them long life, and gives up.
Right.
Your interpretation follows that or no?
I didn't think about that. That's a nice thing. I need to see the Pesukim and understand what I never
You have the
get.
article, of course.
Yes, I do. I need to think about that. But the important thing is that my interpretation interprets the Satan as that persona that C.G. Young speaks about that seizes and controls the individual unless the individual pushes him away. We believe that a person can push away the Satan and say no to the Satan. So he went into the holy abode, meaning in his mind he was meditating upon Hashem, the Creator, and he was reaching certain understandings which are emunot kozerot because he was using his dimayon and he didn't have chokhmah. That's the Satan entering the Bnei HaElohim, and that's why he was punished.
I enjoy
By the way, Harambam says explicitly at the beginning of the Moreh that the person who's osek balimud hazeh, he actually says that it's very damaging. I think that's the damage of Yov.
Yeah. When you finish with this, I want to say something side.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. For now.
I believe the following. Maybe yes.
Yes,
I
I'm
believe
sorry.
the following.
Yes,
No,
of course, right.
It's not Tosh, it's not Tosh, it's not Tosh. But anyhow, I believe the following. And please, when I say I believe, you cannot do me a greater favor than to correct me. And I don't say this because of Allah. I don't. One of the things I don't. Anyhow, I believe that Harambam represented the authentic tradition. Rabbeinu Hananel, the Rif, and even before Rabbeinu Hananel, the teacher of Rabbeinu Hananel, etc. And study Halakhat Pesukah, yes, and Talmud is after Halakhat Pesukah. And the Mishneh Torah was written for people who wants Halakhat Pesukah. What is Halakhat Pesukah? The Mishneh Torah. Yeah. Now, those who were against Harambam begins with the Ravad in France and the Ramban in Catalonia. So how did I go to use a word which is they were not a Tani Hachamim.
Right.
They study only the Talmud, but knew not Mikra, including everybody thought that the things that the Ramban is a great Mefaresh of the Mikra.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't think they knew Mikra. What it says is actually the Rashot.
Right.
Right? And so he didn't know Mikra. Hasaga, the concept of Hasaga is a Christian concept. We never have Abaye is Mesig and Rav Yosef, or Rabbi is Mesig and Rav Sheshat. We don't have this. Mesig is Dof Asig Ahalek Shalal. It's a military term. So I believe that these people were, and I have a horrible word, Judeo-Christians. The Yadut is based upon Christianity. Yes. And that's why, yes, this whole idea of insulting somebody is not, the purpose of the Ravad is not only to show that Harambam is wrong, but as I write in my thing, is to insult Harambam, to insult him. A Talmid Hakam shows his superiority by insulting somebody else, yes, and which is this totally Christian, and that eventually all the people that follow the Ramban in the Ravad, they were expelled from Spain, and some of them, many of them, they became Christians. Professor Ahuda said that in one of his, I forgot one, but in one of his writings, that he met once a bishop, or I think it was a bishop in Spain, he told him that he was a descendant of the Ramban. Yes, interesting. Although there is from the famous family from the Rashbats, Bassem Ahduran, that was somehow connected with the Ramban, I think through a daughter of his. So let me just, we'll take it 2-3 minutes. So therefore, the whole Kabbalah, which is the usurp a word from which means Kabbalah means of the halakha, and all this type of things is an outgrowth of the not knowing Mishnah, not knowing Mikra, and then going straight into the Talmud, and because you don't know Mishnah and you don't know Mikra, you express your ideas by attacking somebody. Yes? So, eventually you have the Shabbatai movement come from it, and we introduce in Torah the whole idea of attacking somebody.
Right.
Not only the kushya is not a kushya,
Right.
but also he's a rasha. You know, he's attacking somebody. So that's more or less what I'm saying. But I'd say it in a nice way in my new book.
Yes.
So I know that you study other things, but I want you to know my things, and therefore what Rambam did. And this three things that for me are very, very important. One of them is writing his books. Yes, Pirusha Mishnayot, Bashti Torah, and the last thing is Idamari. That's writing his books. And the second is a very important thing that he did. Move the hell out of Europe. Because he realized that you cannot have a dialogue with them.
Right.
And he lived a very happy life in Egypt.
Right.
He, his son, his grandchildren, he was partly married a girl from Rabbi Abraham Hasid and so on, families from Egypt, ex-wife families, and he didn't want to have anything with it. He lived a happy life. Now that is my perception. Am I right? Eventually you tell me you think this over and you say with the, but that is more or less, you realize there's no possibility to have any kind of a dialogue with these people. The only thing is moved as far as you can. What is the furthest place from Spain, France? Egypt. You go there, and this, establish, and that's my, that's.
Very nice. Good. Okay, let me
If you have any
Yes.
any thoughts on this and
Of
so
course.
on,
Of course.